All right. I am going to call this interim meeting of the New Hanover County Board of Education to order. I'd like to thank you all for being here. And as everyone can tell who is viewing at home, most of us are participating via Zoom. There will be no call to the audience during this interim board meeting, as is the case for all interim board meetings. We have less than 10 people actually at the Board of Ed Center at this time, which is the current recommendation by the CDC. But the general public does have the option to view remotely via live stream on Roku, Apple TV, and online at nhcstv.wordpress.net. And I hope that you all will forgive any glitches as we do this for the first time. Before we get started, I would like to take just a few minutes of time to just say a few words. First off, I would like to say I hope everyone who is watching us at home is safe and well. These are challenging times, as evinced by the fact that we are doing the board meeting in this format. There's no getting around that. Living through a time of a pandemic calls for the use of special reserves, tapping into resources that maybe we didn't necessarily realize we needed or we even had. As a society, we all knew that education was and is essential. But that word, essential, has taken on a whole new meaning in these past few weeks. The decisions our system is making, and some of which we're going to talk about tonight, those decisions are complicated and honestly, in many instances, groundbreaking. Every day in the education field is a work in progress, but no more so than now. We are discovering new methods to help our students learn. We are finding new ways to utilize our staff. And so importantly, we are seeing our system come together to support one another. And I can't emphasize that enough. Every challenge that we face, that we are facing, we face together. And this is a cliche, but it's also an opportunity to grow. We're gonna grow together. We're gonna make mistakes along the way. We're gonna adjust, and we're gonna learn from them, just as we teach our students to do each and every day. I wanna thank all of those essential people that have kept us running over these last few weeks. We cannot do this without you. And I can't name them all because I know I would leave somebody out, and I don't want to do that. Thank you to the families for your patience. Thank you to the students. This is, like I said, it's a work in progress, but together we're going to keep moving ahead. So with that, let's get started. Let's hear about some of those things that we are working on, we are doing. So Ms. Adams, would you mind, I'd like to call the meeting to order, and Ms. Adams, would you mind calling the roll?
Estep.
Here.
David Wortman. Stephanie Adams,
Here.
Nelson Bollier,
Here.
Judy Justice,
Here.
Jeanette Nichols,
Here.
Bill Rivenbark.
Here.
All right, I believe we have a quorum. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Move for approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? The agenda is approved. Item number 3 is information. Item A, COVID-19 update. We will first hear from the Instruction and Accountability Department, Dr. LaShawn Smith.
Madam Chair and members of the board, as Dr. Smith is approaching the podium, I'd like to take just a moment to reflect and review on the matters that have occurred since the last board meeting.
I'm on screen. Big screen.
There have been many changes that have occurred. We have responded to them. We are dealing with yet another set of circumstances. We continue to focus on the impact on students, employees, and recently on our facilities. We look at immediate, short-term, and long-term decisions and issues that have to be made daily. The team of senior leaders has met and will continue to meet each day to make sure that we're taking action that supports students with learning, that maintains safe environments for employees, and makes the best decisions possible. The team that has been meeting is doing remarkable work. This is a very complex matter. The situation changes sometimes hourly. And at times it is not exactly clear what we should do or what we might do to proceed. We're keeping our focus on learning and on supporting our employees, and we'll continue to do that. And this evening, you'll hear from staff members as they share the information that they are able to provide regarding the response in their area, starting with Dr. LaShawn Smith.
Dr. Burns. Madam Chairperson, Dr. Burns, board members, and those in attendance with us virtually. My purpose this evening is to provide to you a brief synopsis of the district's plan for learning continuity for the students of New Hanover County Schools. Given our closure as a result of Governor Cooper's Executive Order 117. With the enactment of this order, New Hanover County Schools recognized the necessity during this very uncertain time to support student learning differently. To that end, the district proposed a plan to support learning continuity that would evolve with the ever-changing instructional landscape, and that would be responsive to the needs of our teachers, students, and families. The initial weeks of the plan focused on optional supplemental learning as the district worked to transition to remote learning. Remote learning has been defined by the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction and the State Board of Education as learning that takes place outside of the traditional school setting using various media and formats, such as, but not limited to, video conferencing, telephone conferencing, print materials, online materials, or learning management platforms. This is important because as we move away from traditional formats in which to deliver instruction, we have to ensure that the instruction we are delivering is effective. To that end, the Department of Public Instruction and the State Board of Education have identified 5 critical factors for effective remote learning. Remote learning is effective when it is accessible by all students for which the learning is intended and is responsive to diverse learning groups. Remote learning is effective when it maintains consistent communication communication between instructional staff and students. Also, it is effective when it addresses the curriculum and instructional needs associated with appropriate standards. It also includes evidence of student learning, and it is also effective when it considers the whole child, as well as the home learning environment. Centered in our work on remote learning is a focus on essential learning for all students, believing that less is more given these very uncertain times. Flexibility and being ready to adapt when the need arises. Emphasizing relationships in this new learning environment, making decisions that support all populations of students, and also extending grace to all in these very unique and trying times. Contained in the document that you have available to you are the deliverables for each instructional area and the time frame. Understanding that this work has rolled out in 2 phases, as well as hyperlinks to a plethora of resources that have been curated and made available to our families. Additionally, there is much work yet to be done and many questions yet to be answered. But just this week, the district received guidance on grading. The emphasis from the state has been on providing students with high quality feedback rather than numeric or alpha grades. The state has impressed upon districts that it is paramount to remember the unprecedented conditions students are learning in and to focus on engagement more so than evaluation. In grades K through 5, districts have been directed to provide meaningful feedback to promote student growth. And if the critical factors, which I've already shared with you, are met for remote learning, the district may evaluate student learning in the format the school already uses for grades K through 5. But again, with the focus on supporting student progress and communicating feedback to students and families rather than on assigning grades. Similar guidance has been provided in grades 6 through 11. The expectation is for students to again be provided meaningful feedback to promote student growth. But here, if the critical factors are met for remote learning, the district may assign grades to evaluate progress. For both groups, K-5 and 6-11, if schools do not reopen for face-to-face learning after May 15th, additional statewide guidance will be provided for final grades to ensure the equitable treatment for all students, and that will be provided by the State Board of Education. For seniors, their performance for the most part will be determined by the progress they were making as of March 13th. Graduation requirements will be reduced to 22 credits, and students who have either met or were passing all requirements as of March 13th are considered to have met the requirements of a 2020 high school graduate. Those who were not passing or have outstanding requirements yet to be met will be supported by the district as the district works to develop and design a remote learning opportunity to assist these students in fulfilling those requirements. Additional guidance regarding EC, AIG, AP, IB, and NCAA will be forthcoming. Again, much has been done in a very, very short period of time to support our students and families during this very difficult and troubling time. But we all know there is still much yet to come. And at this time, I would be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
Dr. Smith,
Yes.
the seniors
when they are striving for a high GPA to get into a particular university or college, how is this going to help them?
What we're finding as a part of the conversations that are being had are that colleges and universities are responding in a very supportive way. This global pandemic, as we all know, has impacted everyone. And so colleges and universities are beginning to reassess and make different determinations about how students will be accepted. Because for these seniors, they will receive an indication of either, it's called a PC, passing COVID-19, so a PC-19, or a WC-19, which would mean that they would withdraw. So essentially, their GPA is what it is as of March 13th.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Smith,
Yes.
some of the CTE courses are necessarily hands-on courses. Is there any guidance at this time on what they're planning on doing down the road for those courses?
Yes. So for those courses, very specifically, Nursing Fundamentals is a course that requires on-site. Just as the university has pulled back their interns, we also have pulled back our interns. That guidance has not come out specifically from the Department of Public Instruction or the State Board of Education. I know that the overarching desire and goal is to not to negatively impact children when we can avoid doing so. And so more likely than not, even though that specific guidance has not yet been shared, those students will receive credit up until March 13th, which was our last student day. And that would represent their final grade if they are a senior. And if they're not a senior, then I'm sure that the state will make appropriate adjustments to help those students recoup what was lost or what was missed from those courses, since unfortunately, you know, they're not able to continue with those internships.
With the learning, right? Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Smith,
Yes, sir.
I hear you're doing a wonderful job. Keep up the good work.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
I'd add my thanks to everything that you are doing to make sure that we can get this done for our students.
Thank you.
Is there any talk about starting the school year maybe a little earlier next year?
I've not seen that officially. I know that there have been speculation and conversations that I've been a part of as a part of the large district consortium, but nothing that has come directly to my office by way of the Department of Public Instruction or either the State Board of Education.
So what worries me is that, like, kids that are in the second or third grade missed a right good amount of school from Florence.
Yes.
And now they're missing a half a year almost.
Yes.
And it's kind of scary because I mean, some of these, especially the little ones, they need all the help they can get.
I would agree. And so part of the guidance that we've gotten from the Department of Public Instruction really is centered around equity. We want to make sure that those families who are well-resourced are receiving the highest quality of education that they can receive, as well as those families who may not be resourced in the same way. So we are trying to be responsive to that. And what I'll say is I've been extremely impressed with our teachers and our principals. They have gone in what I consider above and beyond to connect with families and to design learning that they believe will be engaging. You know, it focuses, as I said before, on those essential learnings and critical to develop children so that they're ready for that next level of work. And that's not to say that, you know, the number of days that we've been absent is not going to be impactful. But given the folks that I've had conversations with and the work that I've seen already produce, I do feel confident that our teachers and our principals will be ready to make adjustments on the front end next year, so that our children will, over the long term, not be negatively impacted by what we're dealing with right now.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
Is there any talk about extending the school year this year? If that could come to be, I'm not even sure if we're going to open up in May, but is that a possibility? Is there any talk, I guess, from the state about that?
Well, what I would say, again, it's not official. I am a member of the large district consortium for chief academic officers in the state. And we have had conversations. We do a lot of speculating in that group, and sometimes we're right. But we have had those conversations in terms of what it might look like. We do know that that would probably be extremely disruptive for families, as well as our students and our teachers. But regardless of what comes our way, we will rise to the occasion.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Smith, I know we're talking about instruction, but I am curious if there's been any conversation surrounding a graduation. It's a once in a lifetime thing. And I'm sure you're prepared for whatever happens, but do we have a plan for that and a contingency plan?
So what I'll say is some of our high schools have had their children come through in car caravans to pick up their regalia in anticipation of a date. Very honestly, I would say that I would be uncomfortable tonight to say with any level of certainty that we would be able to hold a traditional graduation on the date that's currently set. I do not know that to be fact, but I would be hesitant to say that. But I do believe that there will be some ceremony of some form and in some fashion. Our children have worked extremely hard. Our parents have been incredible in their support of their children. And so we don't want to take anything from them. We want to make sure that they have the opportunity to celebrate this accomplishment. It just may look very different than it has in years past.
Thank you.
Sir.
All right, are there any other questions from the board? All right, thank you, Dr. Smith.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Next, we have Julie Varnum, who will come and provide a student support update related to COVID-19.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Hey there.
Hey.
Madam Chairperson and fellow board members. Student support has been very busy during this time as well. During this time, our student support staff are continuing to support the mental health, safety, and social emotional needs of our students. Our counselors and social workers are connecting with students in the various formats described and maintaining communications with parents and families as well. A lot of time at home for these families, especially with students who have mental health or social emotional needs, is quite a challenge. Our special ed staff are also working collaboratively with our instructional department on virtual instructional models and spending a lot of time assessing the immediate and long-term access needs of our students with disabilities. The supports that are being provided and being designed are consistent with the individual students' IEPs, but of course, many of those students require a lot of immediate additional staff support, hand-over-hand support, and a lot of structure for accessing their instruction. We are working for comparable instructional hours that are provided in these newly developed instructional models. One thing that we're really focusing on is launching our teletherapy by tomorrow for those students who have related services as a part of their IEP service delivery. So that'll be for speech and occupational therapy. We're moving in a little bit of a different direction with physical therapy. That's not really a virtual service delivery. So we're working more with parents and other medical providers for students with those needs. So speaking of parents, parent training for supporting their at-home learners is also underway. Many of our students with disabilities, because they require smaller class sizes, smaller staff to student ratios for their learning, we're having to really support families and caregivers on how to support that. Our special ed program, maximum service program teachers are connected even more right now, of course, through virtual means, but on the development of virtual learning supports for our students with the most significant disabilities, specifically those with cognitive disabilities. And we're also in daily communication with DPI, other districts. Special ed is also a part of the large district cohort for special ed service delivery. And so working on our collaborative guidance on how to manage IDEA regulations right now. So the implications for IDEA regulations would be for IEP annual reviews, timelines, reevaluations, initial eligibility, not to mention the reporting requirements, and tomorrow being the April 1 child count date for state funding. So there are a lot of changes and a lot of flexibility happening. All of our student support staff are also working to make trainings available in virtual formats to accomplish our required and desired professional development needs. And that includes the trainings that we've talked about as a requirement by the beginning of the 2021 school year, the Darkness to Light training. All of that has been launched virtually, and all staff have access to that, along with many other professional development options. As a part of regular student support business, we're staying in close contact with public health and really working outside of divisions and among the divisions to stay connected with what our community is dealing with at this time. I am also open to answering any questions that you might have.
Any questions? Thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Varnum. Next, Dawn Brinson will share information regarding technology and the device deployment that we're currently involved in.
Hello, everyone. So technology has been working very hard as well. We had started imaging laptops for our high schools 2 weeks ago and getting in a new filtering system. So we spent the last 2 days assigning laptops to high school students. We have issued in these 2 days, yesterday and today, 813 laptops have been issued out to students. That was just at the 4 traditional high schools. At the same time, elementary schools have begun their rollout of iPads. We had one school start yesterday. Other schools will be starting as the week progresses. They're not all starting on the same date because I have a limited staff to get to the schools and get the iPads ready. So as we're getting to the schools and telling them they're ready to go, we're letting them get started. We feel like it was worth making them wait so that they were all starting on the same date. So they have started and will be rolling out all week. Middle schools are doing laptops, so we do have to image those as well. So those will be going out on Friday. So we'll get them to the schools Thursday. They will start disseminating theirs on Friday. I'm giving them the option of also rolling out over spring break. If they have parents that are willing to come pick them up over spring break, we will definitely get those assigned to students as well during that time. The process is going very smoothly at each of the schools. I spent the day yesterday at New Hanover. It went very well. Dr. Burns visited Laney this morning and was very impressed with how smooth things were rolling out. 830 devices in 2 days is pretty good. One of the big questions that everybody's asking me is Wi-Fi. Unfortunately, we only have a limited number of devices that have been checked out at schools. We have like 100 Wi-Fi devices that middle schools and high schools have already checked out. We are working through a process to try and gain some more through the state, but that is going to take a couple of weeks before that comes through. We are going to be advertising or sharing information with principals of basically drive up hotspots, so that way people can possibly drive through the or drop off line or pickup line or buy a building and they can still get connectivity. So kids could download their assignments, work offline, and then come back and upload their stuff that they need to send to their teacher. So we're going to give the students that capability as well until we're able to get more devices for students to be able to check out. Any questions?
I have a, sorry. Go ahead. I just have a question, Dawn. First off, thank you. I know that has been a huge feat to roll all those out to all of our students. So well done work by the technology department. My only question, I was speaking with someone the other day and they mentioned that they have a hotspot at their community center. And is there a liability issue if our students are to take these devices to a community center, someone else's house? Is there any issue with that as far as accessibility?
No, that's fine. We have filtering on the device, so whatever hotspot they use, it is going to be filtered.
Okay.
We haven't put any devices in community centers because when we were speaking with one, they were closing the community center down because they didn't want to promote, people getting together and violating social distancing.
Gotcha. Thank you.
If for some reason we don't go back to school, do you have a plan to get these devices back?
We are going to ask parents to return them and we will deal with what happens as it happens.
Thank you very much for all your work.
You're very welcome. Any other questions?
So they are basically able to use the device anywhere within any place that has Wi-Fi. Is that correct?
Correct. As long as they can get on Wi-Fi, whether they go to a friend's house and get on theirs, whether they go to a public Wi-Fi, they can get any Wi-Fi and they're able to get on.
They're covered. Okay. All right.
And
how close are we to being one-to-one? How short are we on devices?
For what the schools have collected so far, we have enough devices to meet that need. If that's what you're asking, if you're asking as far as one-to-one for all 26,000 students, we aren't there yet because of the desktops that we have. If we didn't have student desktops, then we would be closer to the number.
Okay.
Do we have businesses that are asking to contribute or give free devices?
We have had some, but it hasn't been a need at this point. We have enough devices for our students. The bigger issue at this point is the Wi-Fi. And at this point, there's so many people looking for Wi-Fi that trying to find an access point, I imagine, is very difficult. The company that we've been getting some from through Jeet, I've asked them if they have any available. They said they won't until June.
Well, you're right about all the teachers who are, it's amazing their creativity and dedication.
Yep. They're doing a good job. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Brinson. Eddie Anderson will now give an update regarding operations.
There you go. I'm a little taller than the others. Thank you. Ms. Eastep, members of the board, and Dr. Burns. I'd first like to just take this opportunity to thank you for your leadership and support. Ms. Eastep said these have been challenging times, or they are challenging times. But I'd also like to say that during Hurricane Florence and all other events, New Hanover County schools have stepped up to that challenge. Our people in particular have stepped up to meet this challenge and will continue to do so going forward. To give you some examples of that, I'd like to quickly run through the various departments within operations and give you an idea of what they're doing and how they're meeting this challenge. Start with energy management. It's not what you would think of when you first think of operations and a challenge of a pandemic like this, but it's not something that we have forgotten. It's important to ensure that our buildings remain safe. With fewer people in the building, our HVAC systems are not running like they normally would. So we've made adjustments so that we can ensure good indoor air quality. And we're also monitoring and doing energy audits at our schools to make sure that our systems are running as they're supposed to. In maintenance operations, in addition to the normal work orders and repair projects, maintenance operations has used this as an opportunity to expedite many of the repairs needed in our schools. However, most importantly, we've stepped up our efforts to support our custodial staff during this time by ensuring we're using proper cleaning and disinfecting products. We've provided additional training, guidelines, and procedures to all of the custodial teams. And we've also assigned additional staff to support the school's custodial teams. Facility planning and construction. School construction is considered an essential operation, and all capital and bond projects are continuing. Contractors have implemented their own social distancing and new procedures to ensure the safety of their employees and our staff if working in occupied buildings. There has not been a shortage of labor or materials to date, but this is something that we're watching and keeping tabs on very closely. On most projects, we've actually used this time without students to expedite our work and to work in areas scheduled for later in the year or the summer. We're hoping to continue this effort to ensure that all of our construction projects stay on schedule. In safety, Dave Spencer is coordinating daily with the Sheriff's Department, New Hanover County emergency management officials, public health, hospitals, EMS, and all our other partner agencies. This ensures that our response efforts are aligned with the communities. We're able to share resources, provide assistance, and plan for future what-if scenarios. In transportation, over the past 2 weeks, many of our bus drivers were at work and assigned to alternate duties, such as cleaning buses, assisting in custodial duties at schools. This week, drivers are now providing meals or meal delivery to 48 auxiliary sites. 3 to 4 drivers are assigned to each of 18 buses. They pick up meals from a school site and make multiple delivery stops on each route. Drivers distribute the meals, and they're also using drivers to support the school sites by handing out meals. This will be essential over next week, which is a traditional spring break. Excuse me. Child nutrition. I cannot say enough about the great work that Imra Smith and her staff are doing right now. The governor issued Executive Order number 117, closing K-12 schools on Saturday, March 14th. On Monday, March 16th, our child nutrition department had 14 school sites open and serving meals to kids. They provided lunch and the following day's breakfast to over 1,300 children on the very first day of the program. That number grew to over 3,700 students by the end of the first week. Child nutrition, we're operating under the provisions of the Summer Food Service Program. This means the meals are intended to support economically disadvantaged children and can operate within eligible areas of our community. Throughout the first 2 weeks, different volunteer organizations also stepped up to assist in delivery of those meals. And by the second week, we were serving over 5,000 meals a day. The meal program has been very successful, but we needed to move to a more sustainable model for the future. This means we were attempting to meet more or reach more families and neighborhoods. We wanted to rely less on our volunteers and to lessen the burden on them by delivering meals into the neighborhoods. And we wanted to ensure our compliance with federal, state, and local regulations. Yesterday, we began operating 20 different school locations. That expanded from the 14 sites initially we were operating. We also began delivering to 48 designated locations by bus. New Hanover County school drivers are staffing the buses and handing out meals at all of these stops. We continue to work with our volunteer organizations, Nourish NC, the Latino Alliance, Community Conversations, Ring and Run program. While they're no longer delivering meals, we are working closely with them and also working with the YMCA to fill that gap. These organizations have stepped up tremendously, or stepped up and been a tremendous help, and we appreciate that. This week, we anticipated a slight dip in our numbers as we transition to the additional sites. However, yesterday and today, our numbers are higher than average. Yesterday, we were at 6,000 meals. So we think that not only has the program been successful, we expect that that number will continue to grow as we reach more and more families. I'll be glad to answer any specific questions that you might have.
How many, now you said that there's 48 locations that you're delivering. How many school sites are there open daily now at this point?
There are 20 sites that are open. You can pre-order meals online for those 20 school sites or for the 48 bus delivery sites. As well as if you walk up, we will never turn anyone away.
Okay.
We always have extra meals at our school sites and on the buses to ensure that every child gets a meal.
Thank you.
Mr. Anderson, thank you so much. I have never seen from top to bottom. I was at several of those sites, just the professionalism. When you ask these teachers what they care about, when you ask the people passing out meals, how they're doing, all they talk about is the job that they're doing and how much they miss their students. You guys have just done such a great job everywhere. And it hasn't gone unnoticed. The whole community appreciates it. And I know we all do too.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I would encourage you, if you need to be uplifted for any reason, go to one of our school sites and participate, volunteer in handing out meals. The people there just love what they're doing. It's a great experience.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Standing beside the four senior leaders who have presented this evening are other senior leaders and many, many, many directors and supervisors and other central office staff who have responded remarkably to ensure that we're able to maintain our mission in the Hanover County Schools. What we haven't shared this evening, but I'd like to take just a moment to address, are the efforts in each of the schools in this district. Principals, teachers, support staff are focusing on their children, on their students. And they are doing a truly remarkable job. This is a time of uncertainty. It is a time when there regrettably are more questions than answers, more often than we would like. But school staff, especially teachers, are dedicated, committed, Their care for their students is unmatched by anything I have ever seen. They continue to do whatever they can to support their students, and that is something that is truly commendable. Central Office works to support that effort. We don't teach children every day. Our job is to support those who teach every day. And I believe that we are doing the best we can. Wherever we might be falling short, I am confident that others pick up the slack and make sure that the best thing that's possible happens for all students. I do appreciate especially the work that goes on in schools. Also, I'd like to thank everyone for their patience and their understanding. This time is unprecedented. We are learning as we go. The rules seem to change, as I shared earlier, often, sometimes in contradictory manners. That's okay. We're responding. We're doing everything we can to maintain our focus. And I do believe that at this point, we're doing as well as can be expected. However, we'll continue to focus on upping our effort for the weeks to come. Madam Chair, the next item is COVID-19 mandatory employee compensation. I'd like to continue with that, okay?
Yes, sir. Go
Thank
right
you.
ahead. Thank you.
With Governor Cooper's Executive Order 117, we entered the first phase of the closure of schools for students. We had guidance for the 2 weeks, and we have worked through that. The State Board of Education and others have been working to determine what kind of support school systems need in order to maintain learning and safe environments for employees. This past Friday, the State Board met and they addressed grading and gave us very good information. They also addressed some employee matters, specifically leave and also the question of mandatory and non-mandatory employees. We got that guidance on Friday. However, we needed some interpretation. Today, there were 2 webinars held with Department of Public Instruction employees and staffs across North Carolina in HR and Finance. As a result, a change that I am going to recommend and ask the board to consider this evening relates to compensation for mandatory employees. Let me take just a moment and talk about the difference between mandatory and non-mandatory employees. This relates specifically and only to on-site work. If an employee is designated mandatory, their work must be accomplished on site.
Okay.
If you are designated non-mandatory, your work may be completed in another site. We also have, which makes this a bit of a challenge to separate, employees who are working remotely. And remote work has been allowed up until this point. We were able to put in place procedures to allow individuals to work remotely. There are some employees for whom it is not feasible to work remotely due to the nature of their job and the availability of assigned tasks that are meaningful. So we have remote workers, and then we have mandatory and non-mandatory employees. And if you'll think in terms of the site itself, again, mandatory employees have to complete their work on site. So with that said, changes made by the State Board on Friday and changes with their policy, State Board of Education Policy 9.4.2, we're recommending that all New Hanover County Schools employees be designated as non-mandatory, meaning they do not work at their site, except that individual New Hanover County Schools administrators have the authority to designate employees as mandatory as warranted. And again, as a reminder, mandatory designation applies to on-site work only. Let me give you an example that might help with this. An employee in the payroll area is designated non-mandatory, as all employees are. However, 1 day a week, the supervisor in payroll would designate that employee mandatory because the work that would be completed for that day could only be completed on site. The same may be true in other categories, but that's an example that I think is a good one. There's certain things that have to be done on site in order to run a payroll. It cannot be done away from the site. Also, the state has approved a COVID-19 supplemental fund, PRC 054, to be used for additional expenditures related to school nutrition, childcare, which is not applicable for New Hanover County schools, remote learning, and sanitation. Those expenditures incurred due to school building closures, which the money can be used to partially offset the cost of the additional expense for non-exempt employees. The recommendation this evening is, in order to compensate those employees performing mandatory essential functions on site and consistent with additional compensation allowed in times of disaster under New Hanover County Schools Board Policy 6115, for the period of Monday, April 6th, until such time the system reopens for normal operations, board approval of extra pay for those required to work on site as follows is recommended. Non-exempt mandatory employees are to be compensated at a rate of 1.5 times their hourly rate for every hour their supervisor requires them to work on site. Non-exempt employees are hourly employees. They fill out a timesheet. Mandatory, again, would mean required to work on site. Exempt mandatory employees, excluding senior staff, shall receive a daily stipend of $100 for a minimum of 4 work hours per day on site as required by their supervisor. Exempt employees are those who do not fill out the timesheet. They are salaried. And senior staff would be excluded from receiving stipend of $100. In order to ensure that employees are treated fairly and well, this recommendation is made. The funding for this will come from the state funds that are available, as I mentioned earlier, for non-exempt employees. However, for exempt employees, we do have available sources of funds in local funding to provide for any stipends that are necessary. At this time, I do not have a number that I could share as to how many employees might be impacted. And what we're dealing with here are the minimum basic needs to operate the system going forward. So I realize I've shared a lot. I would love to respond to questions if I might.
When it says exempt mandatory employees excluding senior staff, does that mean that school administrators would be entitled to the $100 stipend?
Yes, that is the case with your other policy as well. This parallels the policy that addresses disaster under your board policy 6115.
And this is sorry. This is coming from the state, their suggestion?
No, ma'am. This is something that we may do. We do not have to do this. The money may be used for this to compensate employees. With local funds, it is up to the discretion of a district to compensate employees as they wish when they're considered mandatory.
Okay.
So, Dr. Burns, would that be child nutrition workers and bus drivers as some of our hourly? Okay.
They are non-exempt, specifically bus drivers, custodians, child nutrition services,
okay.
Secretaries, and so on.
Great, thank you.
Dr. Burns, are we thinking about possibility of a 4-day work week and a 10-hour day?
That's something that has been considered at this time. I'm not going to recommend it. One of our strategies has been to the best of our ability to implement different measures incrementally. And what I would ask is if the board would consider this and consider approving it, that is something we can consider at a later date.
Thank you.
What more about the rationale why this would be needed. I can understand in some cases, I've just needed more information why it's above and beyond what they're already receiving in salary or pay, especially salary, why this isn't, I mean, this is very unusual circumstances.
It is, and again, it's very much, not very much, in some ways, like a disaster caused by a hurricane, where it requires extra effort. If you are a mandatory employee, then we're going to require you to come to work. And if we're requiring you to come to work under these very unusual circumstances, then the feeling is that you should be compensated for doing so. The struggle with this particular matter is that the goal of the state board's action is to pay employees and maintain their pay, at the same time address the public health issue that encourages individuals to stay at home. In order to feed children, we have to have employees working in kitchens. In order to deliver, we have to have bus drivers. In order to ensure that our buildings are in good repair and that the environment inside them, the air quality is maintained, we have to have custodians to come on site. We would designate them mandatory in order for that to occur. So we're treating those employees in a way that compensating them seems to be the appropriate course to take.
I think it's important to recognize the sacrifices that these employees are making and the danger, frankly, that they're putting themselves in. They are going above and beyond. So I wholeheartedly support that.
Any other questions?
If there are no other questions, I would entertain a motion to approve Appendix A, the mandatory employee compensation related to COVID-19.
Move for approval.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It is approved.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. The next item is the budget work session, and I'm going to ask Mary Hazel Small to please come forward. At the last board meeting, I presented the interim superintendent's budget recommendation, to the Board of Education. As you may recall, we presented that request, that information, and we categorize things as legislative requirements, program continuity, and new initiatives. And we shared with you the different areas and the costs that were associated with legislative requests, primarily around estimated state salary and benefit increases as we attempted to project, based on the best information that we had, salary increases that the legislature might approve for licensed and classified employees. That is always the case. You don't have a number at this point in the budget cycle, so you have to estimate based on history and guidance, perhaps from DPI. We also had a class size phase-in for K-3 class size and new insurance requirements that were all part of legislative requirements. Under program continuity, we had the Porter's Neck Elementary opening, mid-year safety requirements, and other program continuity items. We shared with you the new initiatives, but did not recommend that they be in the requests that you would consider to send to the county commissioners. The total of the legislative requirements and the program continuity, once we dealt with fund balance appropriation, amounted to $2.3 million. That was 2 weeks ago. Much has changed in the past 2 weeks. Considering the potential impact on revenue at the state level and the potential impact on revenue at the county level, I have reconsidered my recommendation to you. And this evening, I would like to recommend, instead of a 3% increase, the $2.3 million, that the request would be of the county commissioners to continue the current year county appropriation as follows. For operating funding, the current level of $81,366,950, which does include the mid-year increase that you received, and for capital outlay, $3,696,000. By maintaining the current level of funding, it allows us to better gauge what might happen with the General Assembly. Will they or will they not support increases? Will they legislate increases in salaries? Will there be other changes? At this point, there is not enough information in order to project that. What I would like to suggest is providing you this evening with my revised recommendation to you, that we can answer any questions you will have. At the next meeting, at the April 14th meeting, I'd like to bring you a formalized request for you to consider, with it being based on continuation of the current funding, for you to consider for action. Should you approve that or modify it or revise it, then your request would then go to the county commissioners prior to the May 15th legislative deadline. What we would need to do, because the Porter's Neck elementary, the mid-year safety requirements, and the other program continuity items would still be present. We don't know about the legislative class requirements, except for perhaps the K-3 class size and the new insurance requirements. We would have to make adjustments. We would have to make reductions in some budget areas in order to absorb that cost. Mm-hmm. Things will change a great deal, I believe, between now and June. And what I would like to suggest is, upon the board approving a recommendation, a request to the county commissioners, staff would come back to you with recommendations to balance the budget, absorbing the reductions as they are the 1st of June, so that we would have time to gather additional information. With that, I would be happy to respond to your questions. Or Mary Hazel. Mary Hazel is standing at the podium. You can pick one of us, either Mary Hazel or me.
Everything you said makes so much sense. So much is going on that's so different than we could possibly expect. And you don't even know what's heading down the future. So it makes sense.
I agree.
If the General Assembly does not raise salaries, obviously, I'm comfortable making that assumption for this coming budget. But if that is in fact the case, what does that look like for us? What are we still looking at having to trim in different places? Or if they do not grant any bonuses or, I'm sorry, salary increases, would we be fine?
No, sir. We will have to make reductions regardless. You're going to open Porter's Neck. That cost is just over $900,000. Class size phase in and insurance requirements is about $785,000. The mid-year safety requirements and other program continuity items comes up to about $400,000. I would prefer not to increase the fund balance appropriation. We're recommending initially $2 million from your fund balance. So what I would want to do is bring you back a recommendation for reduction in other areas. If the General Assembly were to increase salaries, that would mean additional reductions to cover that. And with the fund balance appropriation, we do not yet know what, if any, additional local costs may come associated with our response to COVID-19. So preserving your fund balance, I think, is a reasonable approach as well.
Right now, yeah.
This evening, I'm not asking, go ahead, sir, I'm sorry.
No, you go right ahead, sir.
This evening, I'm not asking you to take any action. This is for information for you to consider. And we would bring back an item for your action at the April 14th meeting, reflecting the information I've shared.
I think that something that everybody needs to think about and remember is, we're in a jam right now. The state's in a jam, the county's in a jam, everybody's in a jam. And in the event that we had a hurricane this year, a bad one, it would be bad. So we need to make sure and cover our steps right now and make sure we're doing everything exactly right. And I think Dr. Burns has got us on the right track. So I'm behind him 100%.
I agree.
Agree. Jill.
Absolutely.
Thank you, board members. And we'll return April 14th. And we'll bring you a request and ask you to consider it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, we do not need a closed session. There are no items for us this evening.
All right. So if there are no other items from board members, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. I do want to take a moment to thank our TV studio folks, Anita and Michael. I don't know if Brandon is back there. I just want to say thank you for the work, and Tabitha for teaching us all how to use Zoom if we didn't know it already, and for allowing us the access and giving us the ability to do this meeting anyway. So thank you to everyone there. But if not, I would like to.
Thank you, Lisa, for your leadership.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
No problem. I would like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, I want to know what all that Chinese stuff is behind Judy on the wall.
That's a screen. I could say there's a load of laundry back there. Let's not have it fall over.
Okay, just want to make
This is
sure.
the house, you know.
All right. If there's no further discussion around laundry or anything else, there's been a motion and a second. I would call for a move to adjourn. Or
So
every,
moved.
all right. Everyone,
Yes.
sorry. All those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed?
Aye.
Aye, aye.
We are adjourned.
Stay
Thank you,
safe.
everyone.
Thank